So as we continue our discussion on Batman Rebirth, what we do here is pick up now with the aftermath of Psycho Pirate seemingly causing Gotham to go insane. And for those of you guys who are just now joining us in this series who may have just stumbled across this video, DC Rebirth is a line of comics written by DC designed to basically take what worked before the New 52 and blend it with the New 52. And with characters like Batman, he's kind of a weird quagmire. Of course, we talked about this in the last video, but Batman didn't really get a reboot per se in the New 52. Instead, it was just kind of up in the air whether or not his continuity had stayed intact. And we were just sort of left to our own devices. You know, stories like Hush, like Nightfall, like The Killing Joke, they weren't considered part of Batman's continuity in the New 52 unless they were referenced. And so we didn't really get any solid ground. We were really just kind of walking on quicksand when it came to his backstory. But the fact remains that as part of DC Rebirth, writer Tom King had introduced two new characters. The first was Gotham and the second was Gotham Girl. Now, in the series up to this point, they had basically saved a plane that was preparing to crash into a river, and Batman was trying to keep the plane protected, trying to keep the plane from crashing, but ultimately he was unsuccessful, and he was even facing his own death in the process. But because Gotham and Gotham Girl seemed to have powers that made them almost identical to Superman and Supergirl, they were able to save the plane, and by virtue of that save, however many hundreds of people. Now, what the series had done up to this point, it has basically given us a view of Batman in terms of how he sees Gotham and Gotham Girl. And in his mind, he had done a little bit of back search, a little bit of investigation into their history. We saw that in the last video, where he had gone to talk to their parents, and it had been Batman himself who had inspired them. We didn't know exactly how they became Gotham and Gotham Girl, but we know that Hank was in a situation much like, Bruce Wayne's parents, whereby Hank and his parents were walking out of a theater, they head down a dark alleyway, they were held at gunpoint, but Batman showed up and saved the day. After that, Hank had become obsessed with Batman, and his obsession had spread to his sister Claire. And the result was that the two of them had basically become great humans, great people. They had gone on humanitarian missions. They had done as much research as they could with forensics. They had basically become their own variations of Bruce Wayne. And the result was that after some set amount of time that wasn't really given to us, they had borrowed money from their parents, and then they had reemerged as Gotham and Gotham Girl with superhuman powers. And so what this does is it picks up again with the last issue where the villain Psycho Pirate had showed up under the control of Dr. Hugo Strange and had used his powers to seemingly drive Gotham insane. Now, to say that Psycho Pirate has powers is actually a misnomer, and I probably shouldn't have said that. Psycho Pirate, to the best of my knowledge, and this is where, Tom King's not absolutely clear here, Psycho Pirate can be a bit confusing. In the New 52, he was infected with a virus, giving him, some measure of psionic mind abilities by Brainiac. But in the pre-New 52 continuity, he was just a guy who was really good at manipulating people's emotions. Tom King doesn't really give us any definitive explanation on which Psycho Pirate that we're talking about. It could very well be that it is the, pre-New 52, or it could be the New 52. It could be one version wearing the costume of the other. We don't really know. All we do know is that he manipulated the emotions of Gotham, and this is shown to us when Gotham had gone on a tear and basically killed 27 soldiers. Now, his sister Claire is left behind, and she just keeps repeating the same things, that she's scared, that she's very scared. And of course, this is a byproduct of Psycho Pirate's manipulations. Once he latches onto a person, once he latches onto a being, regardless of who that being is and where they hail from in the multiverse, once he manipulates their emotions, that manipulation stays intact unless someone with sufficient ability is able to remove those manipulations. Now, of course, Batman being what he is, there's been different circumstances where he's been successful in doing it and where he hasn't been successful in doing it. It really just kind of calls for what the story needs it to be. But what ends up happening is we show up, or I guess we transition to the rooftop of another building, and we find a guy who's standing on the building and seems to be in the process of committing suicide. Now, Gotham shows up behind this guy, and basically, it seems as though he's going to talk him down. But Gotham keeps repeating the same thing. I can fix this. We can fix this. It's the same thing being said over and over and over again. But the guy says no. The guy says that no, this cannot be fixed, that the monster men are coming. And this is a weird situation here, because what we're going to find at the end of the story is that not everything is what it seems when it comes to the realm of the monster men. But the result is that this man has some kind of a device on his phone, and when he presses the button to activate it, it blows up the building. Now, this seems, I guess is revealed to us, to basically be a flashback in the mind of Claire. And this tells us exactly what was happening right before Psycho Pirate showed up with Hugo Strange and manipulated Gotham. And so in yesterday's video, when we had simply just picked up with Gotham and Gotham Girl in a building that was, immersed in flame, we didn't really know exactly what was going on. This simply just tells us that. But what we do know is that Claire had been taken taken back to the Batcave, presumably at the request of Batman, where she's being cared for by both Alfred and Duke Thomas. Now, this is kind of a funny thing here, and I really liked what Tom King was doing with this. With Duke Thomas, one of the things that I've kind of misspoken about so far in the series is that Duke Thomas was supposed to be a Robin, which is sort of ironic because I covered this in my Batman Rebirth video. Duke Thomas is not actually supposed to be a Robin. That was a mistake that I made in the previous videos. Duke Thomas is a character that's just being groomed to be someone, presumably taking the place of Batman. That seems to be the common idea here. I don't recall whether or not Batman had actually stated that in Batman Rebirth. I'm pretty sure he did. I think he just simply said that Duke was being groomed for something else. But the overall theme here is that Batman, especially with the events that had transpired this far in the I Am Gotham series, Bruce Wayne is coming to the conclusion that with everything that's happened up to this point, with Court of Owls, Night of Owls, with the return of Joker in Death of the Family, Batman Endgame, Bruce Wayne's kind of coming to grips with his own mortality, that it seems as though he's basically losing his grip on Gotham City itself. And the result is that someone needs to be able to step up and take his place. And even if that's not the case, Bruce Wayne also recognizes that he's not immortal. He's not going to live forever. He is going to die at some point in time. And even if Dick Grayson is a great superhero, he's still got Bloodhaven to take care of. Damian Wayne is forming the Teen Titans. Tim Drake is off doing his own thing. Basically, every member of the Bat family has their own situation to take care of, but Duke doesn't have that. Duke was introduced during Scott Snyder's run of Batman. He is a character who led the We Are Robin team. He's basically kind of groomed himself to a degree to be the new Batman, and then Bruce Wayne's just sort of taking the next step and giving him the official training, so to speak. But what's interesting about this is that Duke basically relates to Claire. Again, she keeps repeating the same thing, that she's scared, and it's kind of funny that Duke doesn't really pick up on this, but in his mind, this is really just a girl that's experienced a very traumatic event. But what Tom King also does here is he seems to set up a possible romance between Claire and Duke Thomas, basically having Duke Thomas, comfort Claire as best he can, and then presumably this may or may not lead to a relationship. The reason why I say that is because in comics, it's usually some kind of traumatic event that leads to a relationship between two characters. Either that, or just they kind of start out as enemies, like Green Arrow and Black Canary did, and then they become, they end up in a relationship later on down the line. But it's their trials and tribulations that strengthen that relationship. Of course, and again, this could just be wishful thinking because I love the character of Duke Thomas, and Duke Thomas needs a girl. So I figure what better, character to have than a newly turned superhero to basically, add to the existing Bat family as someone that can fight alongside Duke Thomas. And so what we do is we transition back to Gotham, and Gotham is again continuing this rampage, talking about how he can fix things, and it's just sort of tearing things apart. But Bruce Wayne shows up, Batman shows up and says, look, everything you've done up to this point, you killed 27 soldiers, you cannot fix this, but what Bruce Wayne also does is he gives us his official view. He gives us an official exposition on what he thinks about Gotham. This is cool because it's something that we haven't seen before. We've seen him poking around, we've seen him doing investigating, but this is basically the conclusion that he came to. When he first met Gotham, Gotham and Gotham Girl had saved that plane from crashing into the river, and Batman realized that they can do things that he can't. They're basically Gotham City's own Superman. He had looked to them as possibly the next step, and what Tom King seemed to be doing, or at least in my mind anyway as I was reading this, is if Duke Thomas is being groomed for a replacement for Bruce Wayne, then Bruce Wayne himself looked at Gotham and Gotham Girl as, kind of a tacked on addition to that, an unexpected way for him to basically bolster the continuation of the Bat family, to kind of continue the legacy going forward. But the result is that Batman says that despite the fact that he looked at both Gotham and Gotham Girl as people that could have saved Gotham City in a way that he couldn't, in the end, Gotham killed 27 people. And it basically seems as though he is officially a villain, or in some form or fashion, a villain that has ulterior motives, or simply just lost his mind, became drunk with power. Now, the one thing to point out here is that Batman does not know about Psycho Pirate and Hugo Strange in the equation. In his mind, he simply just stumbled onto a circumstance where 27 people were killed. The word I Am Gotham was written in blood, and so Batman simply went by the evidence that existed at hand. But once he and Gotham begin to get into an argument, once they begin to, to discuss, I guess, debate with one another, what ends up happening is, of course, Gotham takes off after destroying the Batmobile, and Duke chimes in to Batman stating that he's found a pattern, among these soldiers that were killed. And what he says is that their dog tags, when the numbers are rearranged, when the numbers are, when the pattern is discovered, the number comes out to be 24. And what ends up happening is Batman puts 2 and 2 together and realizes that, this basically adds up to Task Force X. Now, the way this ties into Task Force X is actually really, really cool. And this is one of the things that I like about Tom King, because he basically expands on the clandestine nature of the Suicide Squad, but he's also, or at least also seems to be leading up to the Justice League versus Suicide Squad event, which would be the first major crossover of the DC Rebirth line of comics. But what he says, or what Duke says, is that after cracking the code, he came to realize that the unit in particular that was killed was the 24th unit of a military group. And the 24th letter of the alphabet is X. And so what Batman ends up doing here is coming to the realization that X stands for Task Force X, which is the other name, that's the official name for the Suicide Squad. And so what he ends up doing is he basically travels to where Amanda Waller, or at least we travel to where Amanda Waller is located, and she's essentially talking to a military general. Now, what's really cool about this is, Amanda Waller in this bunker, in this military base that they're at, is actually below Gotham City itself. And it's the last place we would expect to find her, to be quite honest. I mean, with Amanda Waller in the New 52, we would have expected to see her in the field, but this is what's so cool about DC Rebirth, is that it gives us the old Amanda Waller that we're used to before the New 52. And so she's the office worker, but she is cold-blooded. I like to think of her as the mob boss of the DC universe, in the sense that she's a person you don't cross. She knows all the right people. She's like the J. Edgar Hoover. She's got info on everybody, and those individuals that she wants to stay in power, and those that she doesn't want to stay in power do not stay in power. And so while she's talking to this military general, the guy says that it's impossible for Batman to find them, that they are, miles below the surface of Gotham City. Batman will never think to look for them in Gotham City. He's got soldiers, he's got huge military grade doors that Batman can't penetrate, but all of that's wrong. And the reason why is because Batman is there. Batman managed to make his way in. Now, we're not told how Batman got in there, and in truth, we don't really need to be told right now, simply because of the fact that it just adds to the cool aspect of Batman. It adds to the fact that Batman can go where he wants, when he wants, how he wants, and there really isn't anybody that can stop him. Plus, it just kind of adds to the mysterious nature, of the Caped Crusader as we know him. But, after he begins talking to Amanda Waller, we learn that from her perspective, Gotham City has been a very tumultuous place for quite some time. And again, this is basically, DC grabbing a combination of the New 52 and the pre-New 52 continuities. Again, with Batman, it's a little finicky here, but, what we're told is that after, the Court of Owls event, the Night of Owls, the Batman Endgame, the Return of the Joker, Death of the Family, all these different events that had taken place, it had basically sent Gotham into a tailspin of chaos and what seemed to be destruction. And the result is that from Amanda Waller's point of view, the city basically needs to be saved. The issue here is that when Hugo Strange and when Psycho Pirate had been assigned to Task Force X, as part of Suicide Squad, they had abandoned their mission and they had basically taken to Gotham City, and that Psycho Pirate himself had manipulated the emotions of Gotham and sent him down a direction of insanity. Amanda Waller had sent those military personnel to try to corral Psycho Pirate and Hugo Strange back in, back to the Suicide Squad, but because they're villains and they do what they do, they ended up having Gotham kill those soldiers anyway. Now, it just seems as though what Hugo Strange and Psycho Pirate want to do is just bring down Gotham City. They just want to instill a whole bunch of violence, chaos, different things like that. But the result is that Amanda Waller turns to Batman and essentially says that he's going to help her bring down Hugo Strange and Psycho Pirate, simply because of the fact that one, Batman wants the city saved, and two, Amanda Waller will not abide people who abandon their role in the Suicide Squad. She will have them killed if it comes to that. And so what's also really funny about this is one of the things that I really love about the pre-New 52 Amanda Waller, is she simply says that she's only going to help Batman do this if Batman says please. And this is what's so cool about this, because Amanda Waller is literally telling Batman, like, you have to ask me to help you, not because formalities, but because I just feel like seeing you beg. And that's what's so cool about this, is because you don't screw with Amanda Waller. And it's super cool. You ask any DC fan, about Amanda Waller, and they'll tell you by leaps and bounds that number one, it's the Amanda Waller from the Justice League TV show that was the best one, the Justice League cartoon show, that was the best version of her character. But two, the pre-New 52 Amanda Waller in the comics was probably the best depiction. Of course, she does have fans for the New 52, and it really kind of goes back and forth. But, what we also learn is that where Batman believed that it was 27 people who had been killed, Amanda Waller actually says it's 28. And this is when Batman realizes everything that's going on, or at least realizes, there's a little more going on here than he thought there was. And he ends up traveling back to the home of Hank. Again, we had talked about that in the last video, when Batman had gone to interview Hank's parents to find out who he was, where he came from, what his background was, and what his motivation was for becoming a hero. And what we find is that when Gotham had gone through and killed those 27 soldiers, that there was actually 28, but one of those soldiers had survived and had gone back to the home of Gotham and had basically killed Hank's parents. And so when Hank realized what was going on, he went back to his home as well and found this soldier in the middle of, his parents' murder. And the result is that, Hank is basically freaking out. He's losing his mind. And Batman tries to talk him down. Batman tries to says, no, you can still turn back. You can still stop this. You can still set things back to normal. But Hank basically throws Batman's words back at him and says, no, you cannot fix this. You can only make it worse. And instead, he kills the soldier, casts Batman aside, and then takes off with the intention of destroying Gotham City. Now, again, we're still, we're a couple issues away from the conclusion of this story, so we don't really know the bigger picture here at the moment. We don't know if there's a much bigger role that Hugo Strange and Psycho Pirate are playing here. We simply don't know if they just want to destroy things. We don't really know everything that's happening. But what we do know is that this is going to lead to a pretty significant battle, a pretty significant conflict with Gotham and Gotham Girl and Batman and so on and so forth. But if you guys enjoyed this series so far, drop a like, make sure you guys hit the sub button to join the Rob Corps, and yeah, leave a comment. Let me know what you guys think, and I'll catch you all later. Peace.